The dawn of every new year ushers in a launch, a release of a new Speedmaster. Happens all the time. It's almost like the year doesn't begin until the Speedmaster has been given to us. I think all other manufacturers wait their turn. So this year we are seeing something very different to the previous year. We saw what I would argue to be one of the most beautiful Speedmasters ever given to us, which was the Canopus Gold 321 1957 recreation. An exceptionally good-looking watch. Based on the 1957, the original broad arrow model with an onyx dial, the design calls back to older times. It's far more subtle and sleeker. Only you would know that you're wearing a very rare, pretty unique 321 base movement in a white gold case. This release is not subtle. It's obviously trying to make a statement. From its increase in size, with the more coaxial based Speedmaster design with the two registers, with all the different colors and accents and honeycomb effects, I think before we start talking about the watch and the new movement capabilities, we should push ourselves back 10 years ago, where silicone balance springs were still fairly new technology. The coaxial movement was now starting to be implemented more and more, and Omega's in-house manufacturing was taking a huge leap. Now this new Speedmaster, packed with the new technology, is actually paying tribute to the Aquaterra greater than 15,000 Gauss model. I made a video about it 4 years ago, I think. Don't watch that video. I mean, the recording's terrible, and things have changed a lot over 4 years, but what I can say is it's one of my favorite Aquaterras because the accent colors are gorgeous. That black and yellow seconds hand is awesome. And it's nice to see that there is a bit of a tribute to that piece. It's great to see that black and yellow could still be a viable option in the future. In fact, I made a recent video about the Zinyu 50 and made an argument why I believed that this color pairing would be fantastic. But 10 years ago, a lot of this technology was still in its infancy, and it's amazing how much the standards have changed and improved over the years, and how much our interests demand, how much our preferences play a part in the creation process. A decade later, with the access to the internet and to online marketing and to e-commerce and having watches presented to us right in front of our eyes, we don't have to go looking for them anymore. Our preferences have gotten to a point now where we are so specific when it comes to watch size, when it comes to its color, its design and aesthetics. I think a lot more people are paying greater attention to a watch's design now than they did many years back. So not only have our watch tastes changed, we as collectors, enthusiasts have a more eclectic approach about what watch best represents the brand and what colorway best works, what size best works for the application of the watch and its purpose. But I think along the way, a lot of us get lost in this journey where we strive to find the watch that best represents the brand, but maybe we don't pay attention or too much close attention to the inner workings. Now yes, this channel is purely about the surface level. It's skin deep. All we ever do is talk about aesthetics. But chronometry has come a long way over the last decade. We tend to ignore that for the sake of just appreciating what the watch looks like in hand and on the wrist. With the advent of the silicone balance spring, the fact that watches have become virtually amagnetic, our power reserves on watches continue to be on the rise, now some even boasting 120 hours plus. Our brands go above and beyond with their escapement technology, with their micro rotors, with the hybridizing of movements, incorporating entirely new technologies like spring drive, like high beat. We forget so often that the purpose of a watchmaker is not to only make things look pretty, but to outperform its competitors. And in a world today where we're less focused on timekeeping and more focused on watches as jewelry, unfortunately, the majority don't tend to look at the timekeeping as much as we would think. So while we're getting all these great watches, great designs, revivals, historic callbacks, reissues, we're also missing the point that the movements that are being implemented are better than they ever have been. I'll put a little asterisk there and say in most cases. The long and short of it, the beginning of this year, Omega has now just given us the Spirate System, incorporated it into their new Speedmaster Super Racing, in collaboration with Niverox, creating a new silicone balance spring with an adjustable component inside it. Now, to us, we're not that interested in the details, but it's pretty fascinating because it allows for them to regulate the watch better than ever before. Not only can the balance itself be regulated, but the spring tension can also be adjusted, which allows for even greater chronometric precision. Omega and their Metas movements generally are sitting between +2 and -2 seconds a day. Now with this new Spirate system, they can regulate it from 0 to +2 seconds a day. Is this a big deal or not? Will this be a gimmick or will this be something that makes a big difference? Time will tell. And to explain it in very simple principles, we can actually use the guitars as an example. the truss rod in its neck. Now, most guitars have truss rods inside it, and what it does is basically allow for the neck to either flex or straighten out, giving the neck some relief to make the action better. What you're doing with this system, very simply, is allowing for the spring to be tighter or looser. That little bit of tension on the spring allows for it to be regulated better. And now we can talk about the Super Racing Speedmaster. It looks like another Co-Axial Speedmaster. Unfortunately, it doesn't stand out from the crowd. I so wish, my one wish for this watch would be that it looked more like the Apollo 8 Dark Side of the Moon. If they had skeletonized this dial and given it those ceramic elements and made it look a bit more striking and exciting, I think it would turn a lot more heads. What I can commend them on is they have taken more of a Japanese racing dial approach to its overall aesthetic, and the details of this watch I really appreciate, like the honeycomb texture on the dial, the italicized font used on the date window, and that small reference seconds hand that calls back to the greater than 15,000 Gauss Aquaterra. So the smaller details look great. I just wish the overall presentation was a bit more exciting. I also don't know what the impressions are going to be like when we look to the lume on the hands and whether or not it looks far too yellow. If the faded lume does work with this configuration, what can be commended is the gradient use on the central seconds hand from yellow to black with a white element in between. We can see that Omega is trying to ride the line quite safely with this release, where the watch itself presents as something pretty subtle with some great accent colors. At the same time, it's housing a new technological improvement inside. This piece does give you that impression of it being a watch that links to callback watches from the past. But we look beyond the watch. The launch itself of this new technology, the Spirate System, will allow for newer watches to be better regulated. And odds are the process of regulating an Omega movement will be even faster. A simple turn on the small adjustment wheel set on the balance bridge and this watch could run dead accurate. But the question remains, I'll leave you with this. Is it going to be a gimmick? Is this something that's going to catch on? Will Niverox be creating these kinds of components for other brands in the future? Is this something that's going to be making a huge impact or difference when it comes to regulating a watch's movement and accuracy? And more important than anything else, is it even necessary? Remains to be seen. I sit back and look at this watch and feel kind of deflated, I think, because Omega really built this up. Like, since the beginning of the year, the last 20 or so days, they've been building up the process of this being launched. I knew it was going to be a balanced spring. I mean, they made it quite on the nose. But, they didn't have to give us a watch. They just had to give us the tech. Still, we are very spoiled, I think. That's another thing I should have mentioned in the video. As enthusiasts, we're very spoiled when it comes to choice, sizes, preferences. And because of that, because we're so distracted by the external stuff, we pay less attention to the internal stuff. Deep, man. Heavy. More power to Omega when it comes to balance spring coaxial technology. I think they have been on the forefront ever since day one. So it's great to see that they are giving us some more componentry to make it even better. I just wish this watch was a bit more exciting, a bit more Apollo 8. Again, spoiled for choice. What more can I say? The majority of watch owners tend to not look at their watchmaking. The majority of watch owners today tend to not look at the watchkeeping as often. The majority of owners today don't tend to look at the watchmaking. No, the timekeeping. Come on. The majority of owners today don't tend to look at the watchkeep.